Hello, dear listener. Welcome to part 2 of our reminisce through the 1990s. Sid and Captain and I shall now continue our chat.
No, I just wonder, I know that when we were talking before, do we also want to explore some of the significant events of the 90s and broaden it?
I finished high school.
I got my degree.
Yeah, true. I was just thinking more world events.
Why don't you all know that I finished high school?
All right, rub it in. You're a bit younger than us. Rub it in.
But, I mean, we were all there.
Yeah, we were there.
World events of the 90s. Let's see if our terrible memories.
I'll name one that I know that was significant for me, and I think, very significant for the country.
You got your degree?
I got mine there as well. I got other qualifications in the next decade. But for me in Australia, with a significant event, would have to be Port Arthur.
Oh, yeah.
When was that? 92?
I think 96.
96. That late. Yeah, wow. Okay.
And I can still remember just being utterly speechless when I was seeing it. And at that time, they didn't know the full ramifications of what was going on, except it was extremely bad.
Mm.
And then obviously, if there's one thing that came out of it, was the change of like the gun laws across the country.
Yeah.
Without getting into a further political debate about that, because some people have their views.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, really? Some people do. Not everyone thinks it's really about gun control anymore, but I don't want to go down that road.
Mm.
But I just think from an Australian point of view, that changed a lot of things.
Mm.
A lot of things. And it's just, that American comparison, like how many times you've got to hear another mass shooting in America, which seems to be weekly minimum. And we're struggling to put one together, like one every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mm.
It was Christmas Day, 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Ah.
Oh, God, yes.
Which, of course, brought back the Winds of Change song sung by Scorpions.
I hate that song.
Excuse me, thank you very much.
What, do you like it or?
Scorpions are one of my favourite bands. And yes, we've heard all of that song to death. But see, that song was actually written many, many years before, but it just seemed to fit during that time. So it became,
I think Eddie has a piece of the wall that came down.
What?
I think he got that through customs.
He did a trip over to Europe with some friends from school, and I think he came home with a piece of the wall, a tiny little one, but I think he's got one. Or it could be a fake. Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, a
rock on the side of the...
a rock on the side of the road, yeah.
Did the Soviet Union break up and there was some countries that gained their independence? When you're thinking of musically, along the Wall Strip there, that's where Roger Waters performed The Wall in 1990, and that was quite a big event, just combining the music and what was happening at that time. Ironically, I was watching a clip of that the other day, and I think it was more of the poignancy at the time that really worked, but that had a whole lot of guest sax on it. I think that, Another Brick in the Wall, We Don't Need Education was actually sung by Cyndi Lauper. Just to take your mind back to that.
Yeah, I can actually remember that.
Comfortably Numb was shared between Roger Waters and Van Morrison.
Yeah, wow.
Mm.
And that's not a bad version, but yeah, it's interesting just to have a look at some of the people who sang some of the songs that you probably would be familiar with around that time.
Mm.
But oh my God, the collapse of the Soviet Union, how big was that?
Yeah, huge.
Mm.
Then there was, of course, Clinton.
Which bit about Clinton?
Well, I did not inhale.
Yes.
I did not have sex with that woman.
No sexual relations.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Let's just leave it at that. Clinton,
I cannot get over the extreme double standard, because you got Clinton and Lewinsky both participated in this, and I'm not talking about the power dynamic, but Lewinsky's found it extremely difficult to get work, and Clinton's not in the same boat. I don't understand. I mean, I mean, yes, okay, it was cheating. Lewinsky was single at the time. He was married and all that kind of thing. The social consequences seem far different between the two. I've always thought that's just so wrong.
Oh, it's wrong, but of course it was going to happen. That's how it's always happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's a smart woman who actually had to move to England to work. She was finding it so difficult to get in America because how recognisable is the name and face?
Yeah, very much.
There's a brilliant clip on YouTube where she talks about what shame is like at that level.
Yeah.
And, it's not like, and she talks about how unfair it is. But Linton, wow, you can keep going.
Yeah.
There are a number of things.
Let's stop there and move on to, you were talking about the gun laws. And of course, in 1999, the Columbine shooting.
Oh, God.
Was that 1999?
1999.
So that's almost 25 years ago.
Yeah. And so we were talking about, Marilyn Manson before and how, a lot of the people came out and was, they actively blamed Marilyn Manson for this. And there's an incredible interview that Marilyn Manson makes. And I think it's in that Michael Moore documentary about Columbine.
It is. They're
interviewing him. And he's, Marilyn Manson, regardless of what has since transpired, but at the time, in context, what he says is, basically like, let's just look at these kids' home life first that made them perhaps this way. You can't blame external things too much. Totally paraphrasing that, but it's so articulate in his point in saying there are bigger problems closer to home than what the kids listen to. And you cannot directly blame Marilyn Manson for what happened. And that goes back to the whole, do you guys know about like the satanic panic that went on during the 80s and the whole heavy metal thing in America and
that was
whole typical thing?
There was also a British band that went to court.
Yeah, Judas Priest.
Thank you. And that was a whole
two young guys.
Suicide.
Suicided. Unfortunately, one of them did survive, but ended up dying of addiction. And Judas Priest were actually, hurled up in front of the American courts, saying that there were backward messages, and in their album, the Stained Class album, and and they were found not guilty. But the fact that that even happened. Is it more about America that they need to, they're not actually looking at the social problems that they actually have,
the
and
root
trying
causes,
to blame, external things because it's a one-time thing that the kids, are fascinated by and really into, rather than the social decay of what is actually happening. Really interesting. You can watch loads of stuff on YouTube about that.
Well, there's related to that is Dee Schneider talking to Congress.
Absolutely. And that's the whole Tipper Gore thing, and look where Al Gore ended up. Wow.
Another big event that I remember of the 90s, the release of Nelson Mandela and the change of the political system there of apartheid. And I think that whole period was between like 91 and 94.
Yeah, wow.
I think it was the opening up of South Africa. I mean, now we're talking about close to 30 years where we know it's like a completely different system. But, during the 80s in particular, used to be on the news quite a lot because of like the violence that went on. And, that's one place that's gone through like astonishing amount of change. Not saying that parts of South Africa are safe. My sister can vouch for that when she had to go on a work trip to Johannesburg, and she could only go to certain areas of the city and had to be escorted. So, but the changes there, gigantic. That's another thing I remember from there. I don't know how it links into music at the time, but I remember probably more of the music prior to that.
Yeah. I think, did they have the big concert and all that stuff? And
They did.
Yeah. Another significant event which happened in 1992 was the death of Rodney King.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So huge change. Has it really changed? Obviously we live in Australia, so, I remember watching it on television, but you know, who knows?
It wasn't just the beating that triggered things off. It was the subsequent trial where the officers were found to be not guilty.
Yeah, and the yellow.
And that's what triggered everything.
Yeah.
And I think people are saying, like, how black and white is this evidence?
Yeah.
Pardon the pun, I didn't mean it that way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then what's his name? O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
You know, how crazy was that? It's just craziness.
Yeah, that car chase at like 50 kilometres an hour. And, yeah, it was...
And the crowds on the side of the road watching him go past.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of my favourite things are cults. I love a good cult.
Waco.
And, of course, the Waco.
Oh, yes.
You know, like, once again, remember watching it on television. Crazy business.
You know, one of the things that they did in terms of psychological torture is they put these big amps outside the building and apparently
they played Blink 182.
And they were blasting music so loud that these guys could not probably think, sleep or anything like that. No.
Yeah, Blink 182.
It was, I heard it was also some AC/DC, so I'll verify that.
I will choose that rather than listening to AC/DC.
But it was, essentially, it was a government siege.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what it was. It was such an unusual tactic. I'm not saying that the cult were innocent or something like that, but the tactics or something like, I've got to check, multiple week siege before they actually finally closed in. When was the last time we saw something like that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, crazy. It's all crazy. So some of your favourite bands of the 90s, they're all touring again. So
Yes, which I think was possibly why I started thinking about it as a topic. Shame I have nothing to contribute to that topic. Yeah, I've noticed there's quite a few touring again, and it's like, oh, they must be taking care of their pension funds to be wanting to tour again.
Of the bands who actually started in the 90s as a bit of a criteria, I would certainly see Stone Temple Pilots, even though their lead singer is no longer with us. I think their energy and some of their music is great. That MTV acoustic set is just absolutely brilliant, especially their version of Plush. Whether or not they're going to tour again with a different singer, I don't know. But, yeah, band that started in the 90s, I would certainly see them again for the first time.
Yeah.
Faith No More I saw a few times, really enjoyed that. And probably like a couple other bands, I think it'd be interesting to see Beck. Just, genre like completely different. But, yeah, who would I see? Probably the one band that started in the 90s who I didn't see, Stone Temple Pilots.
Who I would see would be Foo Fighters.
I don't need to say anything about that.
Okay.
I saw them all.
That was short and sweet.
Yeah, but do you want to see them again?
So bands that I would like to see again, well, I'm seeing the Smashing Pumpkins again. They are my top 3 bands that I've ever seen. I saw them at Selena's. Absolutely incredible. Like, blew my mind. Incredible. And so I'm hoping it can be that again. I'd really love to see Roland's band again.
Won't happen, I think.
I know. But that was just, I've seen them a couple of times, and I saw the Hard-Ons with Henry Rollins as well. That was amazing.
They're coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Henry Rollins is on tour, but he does all the speaking stuff. But the Hard-Ons, sort of play around a little bit, not much. Other bands I'd love to see, I don't know. I've never seen Radiohead, so I think I would like to. It wouldn't sort of be like, a typical concert that I would go to where it's all, thrashy and people getting into the crowd. A lot of people would be standing around, if not a venue that's sitting down.
You got to listen to them.
Yeah. But then I went to see Bikini Kill the other week at the Opera House, which was quite bizarre. The last time I saw them was at the Annandale Hotel. So polar apart, there was lots of people my age there. It didn't have the intensity or the acoustics for a, punk band at the Opera House. And while the band were amazing, it was a little bit disappointing because it wasn't a vibe. And I can't think of anyone else. Don't know.
Any 90s bands that should have never existed, and I think I go with most of those manufactured boy groups. That was just too much.
Oh, look, they all, manufactured boy bands, aren't they? You think of the Osmonds and Bay City Rollers. Yeah, they may not have been manufactured, but they were all there, all the way through. I don't know.
Hang on. You taught me this. What do they have? What's this called again?
No, that's yacht rock, darling. That's got nothing to do with.
Yeah, but some of them still do that when they're pouring out their heart in the song. You know what I mean?
But you have to have it from the beginning. So yes, it's hard to describe how much I love and hate the double fist drag, but I appreciate that they are doing it.
Well, dear listener, I don't know about you, but the 1990s do not seem like 30 years ago. The music does not seem like 30-year-old music. And the people we were talking about, dear listener, I get a surprise when I see photos of them and they're now all in their 50s and 60s and 70s. It just blows my mind. I hope you've enjoyed our chat. I hope you join us again at the podcast with no name, and there will be some episodes coming up again because we are now in our recording season. Until then, see you later, Sid. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this.
And thank you, Captain, for joining us. I know you are being the every woman to everyone person at the moment and will be for the next little while. So thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind.
Not really. Not at all. You're amazing. Until our next episode, dear listener, take care and good health. Bye-bye. Enjoy.
They don't even see my dress on.
Sexy for who, Sid?
Well, there's got to be an audience for that.
I'm sure there is. I'm just not sure where or who that audience is going to be.
Maybe we'll pick up a whole new audience.
That's only if we become a visual medium. Radio.
Have to use your imagination.
Yes.
The voice fluctuates. It gets husky, gets normal, goes husky, it gets normal. And the only thing is people are saying, look, do they still have those 0055 services because you can make some money out of it?
Yeah, a bit of thing.
Yeah, no, someone else say something while I have a think.
Well, that'll be cut out a bit later on.
You think?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear the intro and outro queen.
I've just got to go to the loo. I'll be back.